listening to the RMPodcast, the official podcast of Red Moon Productions. Here are your hosts, Brandon Davidson, Keith Cheatham, and Sean Sebastian. Enjoy.
Welcome to another episode. We're back of the Red Moon Podcast. That's right, we had last week off celebrating our Independence Day here in America. Day. But we're back now, baby. And we're ready to start things off with your weekly dose of movie news and reviews. I'm one of your hosts, Brandon Davidson, alongside our normal new host, Sean Sebastian. And Mustard Love. Mustard Love. Oh, I'm not gonna lie.
I like to love mustard.
It was a little bit sad.
Why are you sad, Brandon?
No, it was a little bit sad not having a show last week.
Yeah.
We just had a little recorded segment with my pretty face.
Yeah, I was sad. Yeah, you didn't have the light on. Jacob pointed that out.
Well, because
we weren't
it's not
live,
a show.
Though. We weren't live.
I was going to say, I only turn it on when we're actually live.
It wasn't live on air, so you can't have the on-air sign on.
That's right. I stated that at the beginning. I stated that. Yeah.
Well, just
come
throw
on,
Jacob.
Come on.
Pay attention, Jacob.
Hey, he watched. I hope he liked our intro.
He watched.
Because our intro, I tried to do a little bit of...
I liked it. I saw it.
You did? Okay.
Yeah.
It's a little celebration of our...
country
Declaration of Independence. It was beautiful.
It was very well done.
Just So we are back this week. Obviously, the big movie on the block last week was Indiana Jones. You heard our review there.
We reviewed it, and that's enough.
That was about all we. You heard our opinion then. I think we can briefly talk about it a little bit and divulge. I don't think it was.
Did I give it 2.5? Is that what I gave it?
You did. I was actually the lowest out of all of you.
I think actually, after sitting on it some more, I would go down to maybe 2, just because it is. I don't think it's bad, but it is generic. But I mean,
I ended up going way lower.
I know you told me.
I ended up going 1.5.
Yeah, I don't think it's that bad.
I think it's completely worth skipping. Here's the thing: it was after I stewed on it a little bit. No, I didn't hate it, but for it to have the Indiana Jones name. Really? I mean, it was so generic and milquetoast. It was like, just stop. They're just literally, it's a money grab. That's all it is off of the IP. That's all it is.
The original 3 is all you need.
Yes, true.
Just let Indy ride off into the sunset and pretend like none of the others exist.
No, I completely agree. I mean, that's kind of my mode of thinking is that there's 3 movies in the Indiana Jones trilogy. That's it.
There's
3 movies.
There's 3 movies in most trilogies.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's like there is only an Indiana Jones trilogy.
That's it.
Nothing else.
That's what I meant. But no, Sean, how'd you feel about it?
I gave it 3.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
wow. We were definitely all over the board with that one. Then. Okay.
Yeah. I just there's nothing like I can really pinpoint. It just was just generic to me, and I was like, I don't know. Like, I mean, it wasn't bad. I think indie fans will like it.
I didn't need it.
Yeah,
but I
think it's the best way to put it.
I still thought it was better than Crystal Skull.
Oh yeah.
At least the story was until the end. The end of the movie was a whole star for me. Just like the end of the movie was terrible.
Well, and it's funny because I'm glad you brought that up because I actually, yes, it's better objectively than Crystal Skull in my opinion. Subjectively, I was more entertained by Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, and I think that a lot of that has to do with Spielberg's direction, and it felt more at times like an Indiana Jones film under his direction.
Yes.
Makes sense.
There's aspects of
this movie than Indiana Jones 5.
I think the characterizations in Crystal Skull are still Indy. Like I think the way not that Harrison Ford's not Indy in this. He's good in Crystal Skull. He's good in this. Like I don't think he loses it in either one of those. But I just kind of feel like there's certain aspects of Crystal Skull that I felt was more Indy outside of the really terrible story that George Lucas came up with. And I don't know. Maybe if Steven Spielberg had directed this one, it would have felt. Even like not that this one doesn't feel like Indy, but it just feels like more of the same, I guess.
Well, I don't know. It didn't. It didn't. It felt like you could have supplanted Indiana Jones's character with any other. It clearly the only thing that attracted I think people to this movie, which there weren't a lot that went to go see it, based on the box office numbers, was the fact that it had Indiana Jones in the title. I don't think with Harrison Ford and Indiana Jones in it, you would have garnered any kind of love for this story whatsoever. And I really just think that says more and speaks more volumes for where Disney is creatively as a company in terms of not only their rehashes and remakes, but just being tepid, dip your toe in the water. We're not going to go, full bore down the path as to not only the love and legacy of a character, but also love and legacy of the themes that character portrays.
I know I haven't said it on the show. I said it off camera at some point. I remember saying that I really feel like that's what Bob Iger's second tenure at Disney is going to be. Is it's not going to be this full-on like kind of woke stuff we saw from under Chapek, but it's not going to be
that he ushered in.
He did. It's not going to be, I think, the full-on woke bore because they realize that's losing people. But I don't think it's going to be a return to classic Disney either. Like I know Iger keeps saying quantity over quality. I see what we're going to get now. I think is just these milquetoast films that they're going to put out to be like, well, we don't want to offend this crowd, but we also don't want to offend that crowd. So we're just going to kind of make it even across the board. We'll still have some like capitalist jabs or whatever, but it'll be like I think it's just going to be kind of just these neutered down stories because they're terrified.
I don't even agree that that's. I think it's going to be more like we don't want to offend this crowd and we don't want to make this crowd happy.
Yeah,
because that's ultimately what it is. They're worried about offending one group. They're worried about kowtowing to fans in this other group.
Yeah,
and it's like so you're not offending. You're not really offending me if you give me a good story and if you give me characters that are believable and that are true to the source.
The mass public.
Yeah, they're only worried about offending one side. They're not worried about offending the other side.
But in essence, anything that aligns with the values of the particular side, let's just be honest, the conservative right, or anything that even seeks to possibly have the inkling of one of those, values, they would immediately write it off as, oh, this is right-wing propaganda.
Well, we see that with this movie.
We'll see it with the movie we're reviewing tonight. Yeah. But it's just interesting because I don't think it's just a Disney problem. I think it's industry-wide.
Yeah.
I mean, Warner Brothers, I just saw their Wonka trailer today, and I'm just like, it just seems to hit this. I mean, I honestly thought it was Disney. I don't know why, but I watched it, and I kept thinking, like, does this have the same? It just feels like across the board, they're taking all of these major studios are now they don't want flops. They want to try to still reminisce about nostalgia and have that get your butt in the seat. Mm-hmm. But then at the same time, there's nothing new or interesting. Mm-hmm. So there's really no reason for the film to exist, which ultimately still turns out to be, other than your hardcore fans getting the butt in the seat, nobody ushers in to go see these movies.
Well, like they don't want to offend the one side by not having certain woke things in there, but at the same time, now they're learning with like we see with Budweiser, you see with Target. There was another one recently that and I can't remember.
Ben and Jerry's.
Yeah,
but they're seeing
give your land back.
Companies are losing money, and they see that. So now it's like, well, we still don't want to offend, the side that we've been catering to, but at the same time, we know we're going to lose money.
Can't.
So that now
because
they're
here's
trying
the thing: they know the media apparatus and the power is behind them. That's the problem. Is they know that ultimately they do have shills in the multimedia facets and these huge media conglomerates, whether it be the mainstream media, and they will rally behind them if they support one message that they abhor and they don't like. So then they know that they have to appease them, but then they overshot the moon and thought, oh, well, we're going to go full bore in and we're now going to completely cater to the woke crowd. And then you actually finally have people starting to wake up and say, I'm sick and tired of this. I'm done with it. Yeah. I don't want any more of this. And then what you end up, you now have to, you can't go back to the middle because you've already gone too far. So now the other side of the aisle say, well, now you're just betraying us.
Yeah.
You're betraying what you said you were. And now they can't. And then the other side of the aisle is just saying, nope, we're done. We see who you are. We know you're hypocrites. We're not buying your products anymore. And just look, there used to be a reason why politics and entertainment were separate. It's like you could have universal thing. And I'm not blaming this completely on just the studio. I'm blaming them on the ushering in of it, but I'm not going to blame them on being able to course correct it. Because there's a far bigger problem, I think, at the core central, ethos of our culture and of humanity in terms of really coming together on these terms and fighting over, what is a central theme and universal message that we can all agree to, because I really do think there's a deep divide in the country over values that we, as a whole, used to never, ever fight about. And for instance, again, the movie review that we are doing tonight, Sound of Freedom, it touches on a subject matter that you should think that would not cause any controversy whatsoever over raising awareness for it, and bringing light to the subject matter. And yet that's exactly what we see in the media, unfortunately. But any last words on Indiana Jones?
No, I think we can get to, because, I mean, again, some of what we're talking about is going to apply to the movie we're reviewing today, and that's Sound of Freedom.
And it goes right into our headlines, too. We're going to talk about it there, because it happened to beat out Indiana Jones on July 4th.
Yep.
The day that it released. It made more at the box office than Indiana Jones. That's insane.
On that day, because I see some critics are like, well, it's just, they're making it sound like they beat it the whole weekend. It was just the 4th. It's like, it don't matter. It was 4th. And they say, well, most people, I think it was Rolling Stone that said this, of course it beat out on July 4th because most people are at home shooting off fireworks. No, 4th of July has always been a huge movie day because people go to the movies when they're off before it gets dark.
Right.
And so to say that, well, no, most people were preoccupied with cookouts and not going to the movies, it's like, no, I remember going to see one of the Transformers.
Then why'd you fight for the movie to be released 4th of July weekend?
Yeah.
Like, I mean,
because it's a huge movie.
Yeah, they knew it was going to be a blockbuster
so I
movie
think it's
weekend.
Just funny that, which I mean, I bashed Rolling Stone a few times in the review as well. So we'll get to that. They were just completely asinine.
Let's dive right into it. We promised it. So here is none other than our review. We all went and saw it this past week. The movie that is, I think, taking the world by storm right now and definitely causing a stir on social media, making waves, and continues to grow and grow. We are. Let's get into our review of Sound of Freedom.
Released July 4th and managing to become the highest-grossing film at the box office for the holiday, overtaking Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, The Sound of Freedom has been making headlines all week. From Christian-based production company Angel Studios, the same studio behind popular series The Chosen, The Sound of Freedom is based on the true story of Tim Ballard, former employee of Homeland Security who helped save the lives of children sold into sex trafficking. Directed by Alejandro Monteverde and starring Jim Caviezel as Tim Ballard, The Sound of Freedom is seemingly the film Hollywood doesn't want you to see. As mentioned, the film has remained in headlines, not just for beating Indy at the 4th of July box office, not because it continues to sell tickets, and not because it has a 76 critic score on Rotten Tomatoes and a 99% audience score. No, the biggest headlines from the biggest entertainment and media outlets instead want you to know how bad this movie is and why it's really a film for conservative nutjobs. We here at Red Moon have never shied away from criticizing poor Christian-produced films. Just 2 weeks ago, I reviewed Nefarious, a film I criticized for not only being generic, but for overtly spoon-feeding its agenda. If The Sound of Freedom were truly no better than right-wing propaganda, I would not hesitate to label it as such. Instead, we get a heart-wrenching film about the true horrors of child trafficking. That is not only just a movie with an important message, but a well-crafted film as well. With great performances from Caviezel as Ballard and Bill Camp as Vampiro, Ballard's contact and accomplice in Colombia, solid emotion revolving around the characters and their motivation, not just in the gut-punching moments involving children. With good cinematography and direction that produces tension and suspense as tastefully as possible when dealing with such subject matter. The Sound of Freedom is both well-made and has a message everyone needs to hear, no matter what side of the political aisle you are on. Despite this, however, major publications including The Washington Post, The Guardian, and Rolling Stone liken the film to QAnon, going so far to belittle its fans as brainless conspiracy theorists. In specifics, The Guardian called the film the QAnon-adjacent thriller Seducing America. Rolling Stone stated, "Sound of Freedom is a superhero movie for dads with brainworms," and that the QAnon-tinged thriller about child trafficking is designed to appeal to the conscience of a conspiracy-addled boomer. Rolling Stone goes even further to disturbingly say the real-life Ballard, Caviezel, and other of their ilk had primed the public to accept Sound of Freedom as a documentary rather than delusion by fomenting moral panic for years over this grossly exaggerated epidemic of child sex trafficking and calls the film a stomach-turning experience, fetishizing the torture of its child victims and lingering over lush preludes to their sexual abuse. None of this could be any further from the truth regarding a $150 billion industry where over 100,000 children in America alone are sold into sex slavery. But yes, the film is grossly exaggerated and fetishizing the torture of child victims. Forget the fact that Hollywood is responsible for films like Cuties or Leon the Professional and the sexual exploitation of children throughout the years. And that's not an exaggeration either, as they themselves have cried for justice amongst the Me Too movement and have decried the sexualization of child stars from both Disney and Nickelodeon, yet have done nothing to change these practices. If you have the chance, you should absolutely see this film, if for no other reason than to judge for yourself. Yes, it is made by a Christian company. The film, however, takes no political stances, and even as a Christian-produced film, doesn't dabble in faith either, evoking God only twice throughout the movie. It's not without its flaws. As some critics have pointed out, it does have pacing problems, and I agree with this critique as it lulls at times or jumps from one narrative to the next a bit too quickly. Likewise, one of the aforementioned lines about God comes off a bit forced and hokey at the time of its delivery. Ultimately, The Sound of Freedom is a well-made film meant to highlight the evils currently happening. It does not fetishize these evils, unlike the critically praised Cuties, and I recommend everyone see it and judge for themselves. And once you have, ask yourself if you agree with the headlines of these major media outlets and why they want to bury a film that paints child sex trafficking as an absolute abhorrent evil. I give The Sound of Freedom 3.5 out of 4 stars.
There you have it.
I liked it. I liked it a lot.
I'm in the same boat. 3.5 out of 4 stars.
And it's not a perfect movie by any means. Like, I'm not going to say, like, oh, this is Return of the King or Forrest Gump level amazing movie making. It's not that, but
It's
it is
trying to be.
It's not.
Yeah.
It's not. But it is very well crafted, especially when we've seen so many movies from other Christian studios that just God's not dead and the 50 sequels they have.
Yeah.
I mean, we are the first people to say, hey, this movie, yes, it may have a message we like, but it's not a good movie. That's not this. Sound of Freedom is a solid movie. Mm-hmm. There's aspects that could certainly be better, but it's still a solid movie. And the message is an important one, and that's what drives me crazy seeing, like, I had to read the Rolling Stones quotes in the article because it blows my mind how anyone could sit here and act like, oh, this movie's terrible, and only conspiracy nut jobs would want to see this movie, and it fetishizes all this horrible child torture, but they'll praise Cuties. They'll praise, and I'm like, anyone who doesn't want you to see this movie, you have to question why they don't want you to see the movie, because it's kind of frightening. It's like you don't want people to know how bad child sex trafficking is.
It took me one look at the guy to think immediately he needs to have his hard drive looked at. Whoever wrote the article for Rolling Stone, pedo groomer written all over him, all over his face.
Yeah,
I mean, look, this is the schlock and the absolute ridiculous.
My mic. I got so mad I punched my mic. Sorry. I just I didn't know if it would pop.
But no, I get so infuriated having seen the movie now and then to hear those comments.
Yeah.
You can't think of anything other than just a complete,
like, what are you trying to hide?
That's
Right.
what I was thinking.
Right.
What are you hiding? Yeah, and I mean, because the movie does bring into the light something that we don't like to talk about, and maybe some of us don't really know that much about, and the fact that it raises that awareness. But I think the bigger issue here is not only does the true story and even the facts that they disclose at the end of the film during the credits point out the fact that Hollywood and LA are part of the problem, and one of the biggest customers is the United States of America. And I think that is one of the things that these Hollywood movie critics don't want to be, they want to avoid that subject. But then on top of it, you look at the countries where most of these things are taking place, and a lot of them are right past the southern border. And I think that's another thing that they're trying to avoid is the big thing. You have people coming across our border that are part of this problem, not just drug cartels, but you have child sex trafficking that's coming across the southern border through Mexico. Mexico City is the biggest child kidnapping That's like the kidnap capital of the world. If you go there with a kid to Mexico City, like, it's insane the chances of your child being abducted, especially if they're white. If you have an American family that goes there, they want to kidnap the kid not just for trafficking but for ransom. It's insane how many. I mean, the Man on Fire movie with Denzel Washington really spotlights that. But they praise that movie, and it's about a similar thing. Just she wasn't a child sex slave; she was held for ransom. But it still brings up the fact that a lot of these countries, especially in Latin America, they are the proponents. This is where this stuff is happening, and it's coming across our border. But we can't talk about that because the border is not a real problem. It doesn't really exist. Right. Yeah. And I think this movie not only touches on this really disgusting subject that points fingers at a lot of high up and elite people here in this country, it also is pointing to the fact that our border and our lack of security and sovereignty there is one of the big reasons this is coming in.
And leading into the review, I think that's kind of why I went with phrasing it in such a way of, to me, you know, when you criticize a film like this, it's one thing to come out and criticize other films with a message you may not agree with and then just be directly opposed to the message. Or in one sense also say, well, I thought the message was okay, but, you know, you can just rail on its, hold on. Yeah. You can rail on the production value and say, well, it's just cheaply made. And then you hone in on those negatives. The problem is this film has none of that. It's got great production value. Far better than than a lot of other indie flicks that I've seen, especially when you take into consideration it was made 5 years ago. There were holdups in terms of when this movie was being
somebody tried to bury
released.
That.
I don't know, something about Disney buying out 20th Century.
They bought Fox and just put it on the shelf because why would Disney do that?
Yeah, they love children.
Yeah, the people who made it had to buy the rights back from Disney just so they could release it.
But the thing is you can't critique the movie in that regard simply because the production value is enough that it's not something you would nitpick. And
but we'll get into it. But
that's
yeah,
fine.
Make your point. Yeah.
But for the most part, that along with the story, that then becomes the focal point of your criticism. And then it's like, this goes back to what I think is the central essence of our problem in our culture today, is that we do have these we have two divided camps that have their priorities. And when you have one camp who's simply out to try to save children from being trafficked in, you know, the fact that the slate at the end that talks about how it is far worse than even when in recent history when slavery was legalized.
There's more
sex child slaves
today than there
were legal slaves during the slave trade and during legal slavery in the 13 colonies and the states and in other countries.
It says in the history of the world.
In the world.
So, yeah, I mean,
but nobody talks about it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And it's funny because even if you want to draw, you know, criticism on that, or even say, well, let's do the research, or they don't cite anything. Okay, just without even going down that rabbit hole, it's like, how many more people exist in the world today? It's like, just by sheer numbers, it makes more sense.
Right.
The fact that you would even refute that already sets you up. You're trying to set up a straw man.
If African slavery still existed today, and I mean like African into America slavery, if that existed today, it would be greater now than it was back then, because there's a billion more people in the world.
I did want to point out, I mentioned in the review
100,000
children. That's not how many go missing in America alone. That's just specifically, they say over 300,000 children go missing every year in America. 100,000 of them are sold into sex slavery. So 300,000 children are still being kidnapped. They may not all end up as sex slaves,
but a third of them
become sex slaves, and that's horrific.
So it goes to point out that, you know, when you do hear the criticisms and it's not on the technical level, it's on the content matter, you have to really think about the sick disease of the people who are in these corporate press offices that are writing on their MacBooks from child slave labor, or texting on their iPhones from child. And look, we're not look at the stuff we have here. I'm not trying to point the finger at anybody, but I'm not also sitting here acting like I'm high and mighty on my throne and casting doubt on other people's intentions.
And
there is nothing wrong with looking in the mirror and pointing a finger at a huge problem that we face as a moral crisis
and saying we need
of
to do
humanity
better, yeah.
and saying we need to stop this. Yeah. And what more than the battlefield of the innocence of children? And that is what this movie brought to the forefront. And I do think it's in a timely manner, and I think we need to hear it now more than ever. And I think it speaks volumes to the people who are supporting it, who are trying to just get the message out there that we need to do more as a country and as a nation and as a people of the world to stop these heinous atrocities.
Yeah. The producer even of Angel Studios, he even said, it got shelved for 5 years, and he said, but God has his timing, and he thinks now was the time. God knew now was the time that message needed to get out there. And to your point about criticizing the film's quality, I will say that because out of all the reviews, RogerEbert.com, and it wasn't Roger Ebert, but whoever was writing the review, they did praise they said it is a very important message, but they only gave it 2 stars because they critiqued the quality of the film. Now, I'm not saying I trust that there weren't other motives, but I don't know I don't think the film's quality is as low as 2 stars. No. But I will say this, at least in that regard, that one site wasn't bashing the message. They're saying, no, this is an extremely important message. We just don't think they do it justice. I don't know how you could come up with that stance either, but in some regards, maybe
it's hard to say when you know the subject matter is something that we should universally be against. Yeah. Everybody, no matter what political camp you come from, religious background, whatever. I think it's universal that selling children into sex slavery is bad.
Yeah,
but it's one of those things that just happens. I remember a long time ago when Kirk Cameron's terrible movie Fireproof came out, there was a bunch of people in the porn industry that came out against that movie because he was addicted to porn in the movie and had to give that up and went through all this stuff, and it was like they came out against it, railing against it. Well, why do you think that is? Because it goes against what they're doing. And Purdue, the pharmaceutical, they came out against the show Dope Sick that Hulu put out.
Definitely.
Yeah, and they came out against that because it directly was about them and OxyContin and that epidemic. And it's like, of course, when you feel guilty, you go to defense mode. And it's like so it makes you think, are these people that are throwing a fit about the story, are they people who are in self-defense mode? And because it's pointing out something that they're doing wrong.
Well, again, and that speaks to the cultural problem that we have at hand, which is, I think, to normalize. I mean, look, you look at the LGBT movement and you look at the transgender movement in terms of its fast pacing of trying to normalize, how, gender roles are just something that's a construct by society and all of these things that are, again, it's playing God with morality. And the simple fact of the matter is that when you try to normalize, the fact that there's even a term called MAPS for minor attracted persons,
people.
It's absolutely
sick.
Insane. No, they're pedophiles. It's a sick disease.
But it started with one thing, and it has spiraled into what we have now.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so the fact that you would even have the controversy surrounding a film like this based on the merit of the story is a sick time in history that we're living in. That has to be defended. Because we shouldn't. We should be able to just come out here, and we're going to move on to talking about the technical aspects of the film. But absolutely, I think we all felt moved by the story. I think it does something well that a lot of other movies may, like, again, because you look at someone, I was glad you drew the correlation to Cuties, because at the time when that came out,
it was critically praised.
It was not only critically praised, they praised it because they were saying this is what young women have to go through, and this is actually speaking against that lifestyle. And I'm like, no, you don't show an adolescent girl on screen twerking, and you're making money off of it.
You gave every pedophile what they wanted. You could say, oh, this speaks against it, but every pedophile with
like
Netflix
they didn't have to subscribe to anything on the internet. All they had to do was watch Netflix.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And get their rocks off.
Yeah. So I'm like, okay, you just gave them what you're speaking out against.
100%.
And I think that's where you think about this movie, and some of the horrific things that are seen in this movie, but they didn't show what really happens.
And that's what I was going to say.
It's all implied, and that's enough. That is more than enough.
And the ways it's implied is creatively done. And again, that speaks to me the artistic vision taking, the creativity that went into making this work on film and do not only the subject matter justice, but also not show anything that is, pushing forward the boundaries of taking advantage of young children is such a great, again, I praise it highly for that in and of itself because it was just so well done. And to me, just the amount of times that I was emotionally moved, and yet there's nothing risque. I mean, my sister and brother-in-law actually took my niece and my nephew, which they've got 3 kids, but the oldest 2.
Yeah.
So the one in the middle, and he's about 10. He's going on 11. She's 15. Gosh, she's going to be driving next year. It's insane.
That's insane.
But that's the thing. They took their children to see this movie because they knew the subject matter was intense. But in the same way that I went and saw Passion of the Christ when I was a freshman in high school, I knew the subject matter was intense and I knew it was gory. But it was visceral. It was real. It was a splash of reality that you need to see so that you understand that sometimes these messages and these voices need to be heard. And you can't shy away from it. There's a plot, an underlying thread or a line that is said in the movie that specifically brings that up about he's saying, this isn't palpable. People don't want to talk about it, but you need to. It needs to be brought to the forefront, which of course speaks to the greater message that the movie's trying to present as a whole. And it doesn't seem disingenuous. It doesn't seem like a cash grab. I know a lot of critics are coming out with that in that regard, saying it, and it's like, no, you can tell. The people who made this film, the message at the end that Jim Caviezel has after the credits, the whole pay it forward mentality of trying to get people to go see it.
And they're saying that's the only reason it won at the box office is because all these few people are buying up all these
What does
tickets.
it matter?
Yeah.
Somebody bought a ticket.
Yeah.
Whether they bought it for themselves or whether they bought it for somebody else, who cares? They bought a ticket because they thought somebody needed to see the movie.
Exactly, and that movie still made that money.
It's no different.
They didn't rally behind bros.
And here's that's the thing, you don't see, and that's another thing because people are like, well, I would like to see how many people actually use those tickets. Well, my theater was full. Everyone I've talked to who's seen it had a full theater. So obviously those tickets aren't going to waste if the theaters are filling up.
I thought it was interesting too because he says in the message specifically I don't know if this is like a designated time or if it was just something they're hopeful for, but he specifically mentions a 2-month window while it's in theaters. And I thought, that's interesting because maybe without even, knowing if it was going to be successful or not, the production studio already put up the money to buy out the theaters that they had, because that's the other thing that they don't talk about in the success of just not only on July 4th, but even this weekend. It was number 3 at the box office, which this gets into a little bit more of the headlines, but also the fact that it is in less theaters.
Yeah.
It's fewer theaters than Indiana Jones 5 and than Insidious was. So the fact that this movie is still popular amongst the theaters that it's showing in, and it's far fewer screens, that's incredible. But as far as the technical aspect, Sean, I know you had some gripes.
Yeah,
I wanted you to bring that up.
Definitely production value wasn't enough for me to... It's not anything that really took me out of the film or anything like. There was just... I noticed a couple of things throughout the film. There's multiple scenes where characters are wearing the same clothes they were wearing in the previous scene, like days before. There was a couple of shots that were done in the office space where Jim Caviezel's office is, and he's working at a computer. His cubicle was the only computer in this entire floor of the offices that had a computer on it. The rest of them were just empty cubicles, so it was obvious that they just rented out a floor of an office building and set him up a little space by the window. And so there were things like there was a part where they were in a train station, and I looked it up. They shot it in a train station, but they put like a Homeland Security sign on the wall to make it look like they were in the Department of Homeland Security, but it was shot in a Union station. So it was, there was a couple of things, minor things like that just kind of, and I don't even know why they popped out to me. There was, the father, when he is reunited with his son, when the father and the son come to reunite with the daughter at the end, the father is still wearing the same clothes and the son was still wearing the same clothes they were in at the beginning of the movie. So,
well, they're poor. That might be the only clothes they have.
It may be, but again, it was just like you could tell that they dressed them up and shot this scene, and they shot this scene probably in the same day. They were wearing the same wardrobe, so I thought that was kind of cheap. But again, then you have aspects of the film where they go into like Honduras or
Cambodia.
I mean, they're in the jungle. And those shots were impressive because, one movie that really stands out to me that was filmed all in the jungle and not on a set was Tears of the Sun. And and I remember listening to Bruce Willis talk about how terrible it was, but everything in those scenes that was pretty legit. And I don't know where they filmed it. I'm sure they really didn't go to Cambodia, but it looked like Cambodia. It looked like they were in the jungle. And and I really appreciated that. As like they could have shot that in somebody's backyard in Georgia for all we know. I don't know. But so there's certain aspects of the film that I thought were very well done technically and gave it this big production value look. But then there were other scenes like the office space where I'm just like, you want me to believe that he's at the Department of Homeland Security? He's in an office. There, you never see anybody else in the office. Just him and his boss are the only two that are ever there. He's only there at night. He's never really working during the day. And then his is the only cube with a computer. I was like, that looked kind of cheap. But again, when you factor in some minor things like that versus the story and the way that they tell the story, you can't really. It doesn't really knock a lot of it off for me. Like I still gave it. I'm still between the 3 and the 3.5. If I gave it a 3, it'd be a very high 3. But it technically, those were the things that bothered me about the film. And then the acting from the father, I thought was absolutely horrendous. I thought the father did not emotionally get me at all. I'm like, I'm a dad. Wow. If my kid went missing, that's not at all how I would react. If I got my kid back, I know that's not how I would react. I mean, there would be a falling to my knees. I wouldn't be able to stand. I would have been sick to my stomach. And being reunited with my child, it would have been like I was seeing Jesus face to face. Like it would have been a spiritual, emotional thing. And I thought when he comes off the plane and gets introduced back to his son, I was like,
I agree
that
with
was
that
pathetic.
Scene. I do agree because I told Brandon that I thought when he get his son back, I didn't mind it so much because you see him grab him.
It was like he was
go.
away for the weekend or something, and he missed him a little bit. And I'm like,
he grabbed him and wouldn't let go, and I was like, that was okay. But I thought when he reunited with the daughter at the end, that one was good.
One was better.
Yeah.
Yes,
but I thought the son, I agreed. I thought like I wanted a little bit more there. I do agree with that.
And then I would also say just Jim Caviezel. I've seen him act better in The Passion. I've seen him act better in Frequency, which was not a good movie. But I've seen better acting from him. The only thing I don't know is if he's playing a character that really acts that way. Yeah. Is the real Tim Ballard a monotone, shut down, kind of just serious all the time guy? And if it was, then he did a great job.
I think in that kind of that line of work, you almost do kind of come a little because that was kind of part of his character arc too.
The moments where he tears up and cries, I was good. Like, those are good. But then there's just so many other moments when he's, God's children are not for sale.
That was bad.
And I'm just like, that the line wasn't terrible.
Yes,
but it was delivered terribly.
It was the position.
I mentioned
where
that.
It was said.
Yeah, I mentioned that in the review too because I didn't like the way he delivered it.
It's weird because I'm going to disagree quite a bit. I thought the acting was actually one of the main bright spots of the film, especially from Caviezel. And not necessarily because he's playing a different role. I mean, it is kind of an everyman role, in the sense that it's a father that has this really tough job that you can tell is draining on him. No. But I really thought a lot of the moments. To me, what I liked about it was he says a lot more with his emotions on his face and his facial expressions, and especially his eyes. More so than he does his dialogue.
He does that in The Passion too. Yeah.
I agree.
There's very little dialogue in that movie. It relies on his face.
He's great at acting, like physically.
Yes.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I thought the father. I'm going to say I disagree because I thought his acting was well delivered. I thought the writing of the character was a little bit, off in terms of the way in which he was directed to act. Or maybe even the way the scenes were set up for him to respond. Because truth be told, I thought the set piece at the very beginning of the film was very well done to get you emotionally involved in the movie.
Yeah.
And the point where he's running out of the hotel and running down the street of like just in a panic of I don't know where to go.
Yeah.
And it cuts to the credits, the opening credits. I was like, great intro to the movie.
Agree.
And then there were moments where after that, the only knock I had against the father was not necessarily his acting, but was more so his motivation. I'm like, so you're waiting. I didn't think it was very believable or realistic that there's so many times where Caviezel's on this journey. And of course, the movie's about him. I'm not going to fault it entirely.
Yeah.
It's very much a message about Tim Ballard's passion of wanting to get out there and bring light to this and save as many children as possible. But ultimately, I'm like, that father, I feel like would have been a lot more at wit's end and trying to do everything in his power of what he could accomplish.
He just gets
and
up
I
and
just
goes to
felt
work.
like there, I felt like there were
meantime.
moments where, I understood the scenes where he felt dejected, where he's laying like the drum. I love the beautiful wrap up of how that it starts and ends. I thought that was fantastic. But even that scene of him bringing that into her empty bedroom and laying it on her bed, I thought that was a great scene. There were scenes that I thought were well delivered with him in it. I just felt like his overall character arc, I almost felt like there were enough times where he should have just taken a backseat entirely, or they not focus on him and just focus on Jim Caviezel going after his main mission of going after to save these siblings. Because I'll be honest with you, my main gripe with the film, and the reason I only knocked off a half star, was there were a couple pacing issues in terms of the story and in terms of it leading you from one scene to the next. There were really kind of three very defined acts, whether it's the intro to whether it's, okay, I'm now focused on just the boy and his story, and now we're moving on to the last act of the film of we're trying to find his sister. And as a whole, it's, the whole movie is tied up nicely in a bow by the end, but there were some pacing problems with how we move from one scene to the next. But as far as Jim Caviezel acting and but especially Bill Camp's, the scene with Bill Camp talking to Jim Caviezel in the bar setting or the restaurant setting, and he talks about his reason for being in this fight, I thought was not only well delivered, but showed me the reason why this film is not only worth watching, but is by far some of the best that I've seen in a while. Because I hate to say it, we've talked a lot about milquetoast movies.
Bill Camp, is he the
he's the
guy with the
helping
hat
him.
and the cigars?
Yes.
He was the best actor in the movie.
I agree.
Yeah.
He was my
He was.
favorite.
Yes.
I loved him.
And to me, I'm like, as many movies that have been, I mean, I hate to say it, I'm going to throw it out there. I'm not trying to compare them on a one-to-one level, but when I see Guardians of the Galaxy, when I see, Renfield, just throwing out other movies that we've already reviewed this year, when I see other big A-list movies come out that don't have the emotional connection or caliber of roping me in, not only because of the subject matter, but just because of the acting alone, it showcases just how at a loss we are right now and how just drain dry the oasis is out in the desert of films where you actually get good performances that draw you in. You usually just have to wait till the end of the year and you hear about best actor, best actress noms. And even when you see them, I've only seen the last handful of the last few years of like maybe one or two scenes throughout the movie. Whereas I felt like this is a movie where the performances are what have to draw you in and bring you through the rest of the film.
Yeah.
If you don't have those, the movie's going to fall flat. I'm not going to be invested. I'm not going to care where these characters are going. And that ultimately was one of the brighter spots of the movie, I felt like, was the acting. So like I said, other than a few pacing issues, I thought it delivered well. I hate to say it. I mean, I know y'all may disagree with me, but or I don't hate to say it. I'm glad to say it. So far this year, it is one of the better films
I agree.
I have seen. It's easily in my, I'd say, top 3 from what I've seen this year. And I hate to say it, I say that, and I don't even have a list made out. I need to go back and look at all the things we've seen and reviewed. But it's one of the highlights of this year so far, which is crazy thinking about what we have ahead with Oppenheimer, Barbie, Mission Impossible. We're going to be reviewing
This
next
whole
week.
month is packed.
And
Packed
it's like,
month.
and to say that already here it is, we're halfway through the year, and yet it took this long to get a significant film that I'm willing to put on my list of one of the best of the year already.
I thoroughly. I hate to say enjoyed it because like it's not the movie that you sit
That's
and
where
enjoy.
I'm at.
You
It's
know?
not the most entertaining film I've seen this year, but it's the film that I'll remember from this year for sure. Like it's one of those films that
most
I'm
moving.
not going to forget. Yeah,
It definitely. I mean, I think it definitely highlights a real issue that it's hard to fathom why we make this issue political at all. And I agree. I don't, other than the one line that I agree, I didn't like the way Caviezel delivered that God's children are not for sale. Other than that, I thought he was fine, and I agree with you. Bill Camp, I think, was the best in the movie.
I thought he was awesome.
Fantastic.
Yeah. The wife was the other one that I thought was kind of. And
she
they
wasn't
show
in it
her
much.
twice, but I'm like,
that was it.
Your husband comes home and tells you this is what he's going to do, and you're like, you quit your job.
Yeah,
and you go
yeah,
save those
I
kids.
agree.
Well, actually,
I'm like,
apparently
that feels like a Christian movie that I've seen in the past.
That happened in real life, though. Tim Ballard said that when he called his wife, because he said he was actually hoping she would tell him no, because secretly, like, he wanted to do it, but he said that he had a cowardly moment here. He was thinking, well, I'll call my wife, and then she'll shoot it down, and then I'm home
I'm
free.
out, yeah.
But then she said, no, you need to do this, and he knew, like, yes, I do.
But I think the movie could have maybe showed
Played
a
it better.
little bit more
Maybe
that
even
led up
showed
to
his
that.
doubt, that cowardly moment of him, like, maybe have him kind of externally say,
They gave us
you
nothing
know.
to show just how supportive his wife was of
Yeah.
it.
Well,
You know,
and I will say when
She was a non-character, but yeah.
yeah.
Right. She was a non-character. And when I watched the trailer and it shows, because literally Jim Caviezel, Bill Camp, and Maria Sorvino, I think is her name, it shows their names in there because they're the big actors in the movie. And what's funny is it has Academy Award winner above her name. And I'm like, she's literally in the movie for like 3 minutes.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
She's not in
Yeah.
the movie. She's not a major
I will say
character
the
at all.
kids were fantastic. Their acting
Oh,
was
absolutely.
like the dad was. I agree. Like he
I've
could
seen
have
the
been
little boy in something before,
but I thought they did really
Yeah.
good. I agree with you. I wanted more with the son scene, but I mean the
Heart-wrenching.
and the
Heart-wrenching
pacing.
moments
I
with them.
agree. There were moments where I was like, okay, this is dragging, but overall, like I just I
Just
thought
like
it was,
I agree with you 100% though, Brandon, on the creativity behind how to show that without going into too much detail. Like we were sitting there watching it, my wife and I, and the moment that they started putting makeup on her,
Yes.
while they're taking her picture, it made me sick because it's
yes.
like you're not doing makeup to do her glamour shots.
Nope.
Yeah.
You're putting makeup on her to sexualize her for these pedophiles,
and
that was that was crazy.
One other thing I thought was a huge highlight, which is shocking and surprising for any indie film in general, but especially like an indie with a Christian-made studio behind it, or a Christian studio behind it, is the music. I thought the music was phenomenal. The main piece that you can download, they don't have any of the other I think orchestral moments. I mean, a lot of it is it's kind of I don't even know what you would call it, humming and
they have a lot of kind of
it's
chorus type
melodic.
moments. Yeah.
But it's like there were times where I just that was moving, and I was shocked by that because again, for an indie movie, to take the risks it did to tell the story in the grandiose fashion that it did. I mean, there were some elements in the foreign countries that I was not expecting, because I'm just sitting here, even when the police force that rides up on the beach
island,
and they're in uniform, and I'm sitting here and I'm like, of course they have Tim Ballard there as an expert who can say, this is what they look like, or can we go there and see what their outfits are and match closely to it. I'm like, there were elements that I thought they would have cheapened out on, or it would have looked unbelievable.
Yeah.
And there were just incredible moments of authenticity that I actually was like, wow, this is more impressive than I was expecting.
The language was also, I was telling Keith on the way over here, the language in the movie was authentic. You got these Christian or at least faith-based film production
They're talking
companies,
an accent,
and they don't put cussing in any of their movies.
That too.
And I was like, them using the foul language in the movie made it more
realistic,
real.
yeah.
And that's bold for Angel Studios to do that when they're a Christian film production company. For them to throw that into a movie and take the risk on that, not only is it rated R because of the subject matter, but then you've got the language on it too. And I'm like, that you're making it more relatable. To real people,
realistic. Because I'm sure these sex traffickers aren't all clean mouthed, like, "Oh, here, sir, here's your child sex slave." Like, I'm sure I'm positive they cuss. Yeah.
I was really surprised. The first, right close toward the beginning of the movie, somebody says shit, and I was just like, wow, from the producers of The Chosen. Okay. and I'm fine with that, because that's real life.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's like, if you're gonna this film doesn't have a gospel message to it.
No.
And it shouldn't, because it's about something different. But I mean, it's at the same time, you're never going to get people to pay attention to faith-based movies, unless you make them real. And I think even something as simple as as using the way people really talk.
Yes.
In a film that's going to showcase
It's
that.
been my biggest gripe with things like God's Not Dead and other movies.
They're just completely unrealistic.
I want to get a little bit into this when we go into the headlines because we're going to talk about it beating Indiana Jones. So let's go ahead and let's roll that headlines open.
Pow, 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 bang,
Pew,
bang,
pew,
pow,
pew,
pew.
pew, pew, pew.
I don't know where that came from. I
don't
either. We haven't did scat in a
Scat,
while.
scat, scat,
Whatever we were doing before, I wanted to do something different. I don't know.
But no, let's talk about, we already kind of mentioned it, that Sound of Freedom did beat Indiana Jones at the 4th of July box office. Yes, that does include pre-sales, but when would a huge mega media publishing company not include pre-sales? Because that's all we hear about leading up to any next big Marvel movie.
They already started with pre-sales for Mission Impossible and other movies. So yeah,
so it's like they can base projections of the full weekend off of that. So it's like it was a huge feat, because I think when you think Indiana Jones, it's much more than just big blockbuster movie. It's, oh, this was a franchise film.
Yeah.
And yet not only was it poorly received in terms of its overall box office number based on what they spent to make the movie and even promote it, but then when you turn to this indie flick that has been made for 5 years and was blocked presumably by Disney when they bought Fox, it's kind of an interesting, little tip of the hat to, hey, not job well done. Good for you all.
The point is that this movie's already made, I think, like almost triple its budget at this point.
Yeah.
And it's this tiny indie flick, and independent, not indie. And that's the thing, everybody's like trying to like make all these excuses for why it won on 4th of July and this and that. And it's like, well, indie this, but Indy is a massive franchise blockbuster film. It should have been number one 4th of July weekend and on 4th of July. This past weekend, it should have been number one because it had no real competition. The fact that it's not, or that it's not making its budget back, it's like, I'm sorry, you can try to make all the excuses you want because you don't want to give kudos to a film that you perceive as Christian conservative because it's from a Christian studio. But
and that's what I find so ridiculous. It's like, you don't think the bean counters are behind the scenes saying, "Oh crap, oh crap, we got a problem."
Yeah,
like you may not want to. You may try to save face in the media.
They're not going to say it. Yeah, in the headlines.
You can say that all you want, but we know back behind closed doors you're freaking out because you just had a massive bomb and an indie flick came in, and it speaks to the other volume of, look, there is truly a void right now in the landscape of just not even Hollywood, in art and in multimedia in general, that has a yearning and a grasping of wanting this hole and this gaping hole fulfilled by actually not even like just Christian messages, but good values and good morals from things that we used to get in just children's films, that we used to just get by turning on a movie that was like, again, go back to what I said at the beginning of the show, universal messages that transcend culture, that ultimately
that make them timeless.
That make them timeless. And especially, even so, when it comes to, I will kind of narrow that down to the Christian medium, and I will say, look, there's tons of content created artistically in the Christian forms, or in the Christian form factor, but there's still a lot that breaks into the there's still a very minute amount that breaks into the mainstream. And that I don't blame the general populace for that. I do blame the content creators, because you do have to appeal to much more than just, oh, well, like you said, Sean, does this have the gospel in it? Because that's the only reason I'm going to consume it. For a lot of people in those spaces, that's all they think about. And I'm like, but what are you creatively trying to say? This may be a way you can get the message out to a lot of people. But the problem that I had with God's Not Dead in a lot of movies is it is the pat on the back. It is the, I want to go and feel good about being a good Christian and supporting this Christian-made film.
It's just, I want to go feel good about being a Christian.
Yeah.
How many non-Christians went to see the movie? And how many Christians invited their atheist or non-Christian friends to go see it with them? Probably not very many. Yeah. It's one of those films that if you're a Christian, it's like, oh, there's a clean, family-friendly movie that I can go see and feel good about myself. But it's not necessarily a gospel message if no one that doesn't already have the gospel is watching it.
And how many of these people who don't have faith or are atheists, and any of them that actually did watch God's Not Dead, I guarantee you it didn't do anything to move them one way or the other. They're going to look at it and laugh at it.
No,
and I can't blame them.
It made them out to all be horrible people.
Yeah.
It's like, if you don't know Jesus, you're a terrible person.
And it's one of those things. Yeah, it's just it is one of those things where all you're doing is you're speaking to the choir.
Yeah,
that's all the movie. That's all the movie did. It doesn't do anything at all.
Well,
but this one doesn't.
No, I was going to say one thing I actually thought was interesting about this film is anybody who comes out and says that clearly hasn't seen it.
Yeah.
They have not seen the film.
It has really, like Sean said, it doesn't have a gospel message. It only mentions God twice. So you can't say it's like, oh, well, it's just this faith propaganda. It's like, no, because it doesn't really even touch on faith. And then you can't really, I don't know what about it is really conservative because it's about stopping sex. Like, that's the thing.
Right.
Like,
it shouldn't be conservative or liberal. It should be universal.
It should be a unified
to
message.
say it's overtly Christian or overtly conservative makes me feel like you haven't watched it because I don't get that.
And that's what a lot of pundits on Twitter and across the the right-leaning landscape, and rightfully so, have been calling out. Is it's like, if you're making this into a left and right issue, what does that say about the left side of the aisle? Because really, if you're wanting to say, ooh, child sex trafficking movie that says it's bad is bad movie, it's like,
so is it good?
So are you promoting groomer and pedo films?
And like you said, if you made the argument that the movie itself was made poorly, but the message is great, that's fine. But they're not even doing that. Rolling Stone talks about, like I said, how they over-exaggerate the problem. And it's like, no, they're not over-exaggerating the problem.
One that
it's a real problem.
Is the QAnon stuff. I'm like,
oh, yeah.
Look, nobody can even explain what the hell QAnon is.
Yeah.
It's literally just in the ether out there since January 6th. And they're just mentioning it as this phrase to be like, oh, devil. It's so funny how ritualistic and religious the left is to their own ideology when they start to form these practices of, again, upholding certain values that are just the exact antithesis of breaking, of what society is and building an uplifting society, but rather tearing it down to its most degrading means. And I think that, to me, is of utmost when you hide behind all these conspiracy theories that you're accusing the other side of promoting. I think it's kind of interesting and funny that it's like, no, you're just showing your hand here. Yeah. You're exposing yourself to who you really are. And ultimately, it is sad because of the moral decay and the fact that we don't have the moral backbone anymore of major institutions to stand up and say, again, take the very essence of the uphill battle this movie had to go through to get where it's at. You don't have it in all of the theaters that are carrying Insidious or Indiana Jones. You don't, the fact that you can't get it in every major theater outlet that they don't want to carry it because it may cause controversy. It's like, really? That's where we're at? The fact that you have Rolling Stone or CNN having somebody on to clearly lambast this film as some QAnon male husband, father, brain-infested, brainworm is what they call it.
Yeah, I don't know what that is.
Just like, when they say this, I'm just like, what are you against here?
Well, facts. Because the movie is based on a true story, and all of these things really happened. Yeah. It's not an over-exaggeration,
but still, that's a film.
You could say some of it's dramatized, but the amount of arrests, that's not dramatized.
No.
The amount of people that were involved in this, that's not dramatized.
The amount of children saved, not dramatized.
No, that's what I'm saying. It's like looking at Schindler's List and saying, oh, that makes the Holocaust out to be way worse than it really was.
Yeah.
Like, I mean,
comparison.
Come on, this is really stupid. Like, it's factual. There's evidence for this. Ask Tim Ballard. Ask the family. What would be awesome is if CNN or some news would have the father of these two rescued children on and ask him how damn real it is.
Yeah.
And then see what they say.
No, absolutely.
They would just criticize him.
Well, they can't confront, because that's the thing. Anymore, and we've had this problem since social media has existed since the dawn of the internet, where you can hide behind a keyboard and a screen, and you can write schlock the way that a major publication is going to print, and they know they're getting traction in terms of just getting the clicks, getting the controversy, because that's what they really aim to be. I mean, it's no different to me than Lil Nas X getting up there and dancing around with the devil. All it is to just promote the idea of not only promiscuity and just complete depravity, but it really talks to the other end of, I want you to notice me. I want attention. And it's like, okay, again, that speaks volumes of what it is that you're willing to put at the forefront of what your main message here. It's always about themselves. They're complete narcissists that don't have any actual shred of credibility other than they just want their name in the bright lights for a little bit. So kudos to you. You got it. You got the traction you were looking for. But the difference is you're still going to be a piece of human refuse in a week or so. Nobody's going to remember your name.
Yeah.
People will actually still be seeing this movie not only months from now, but years from now when they show it to another generation, just like Passion.
And you mentioned, like, why don't they talk to Tim Ballard? They have, because he's ardently defended this film,
right?
And they've written him off as a QAnon conspiracist himself.
That's why I say maybe skip Tim Ballard and go to the parents of some of these kids, these child victims, and ask them how real it is, or ask them if it's is this QAnon propaganda or did this really happen, and see what they say.
And he because CNN made some tweet about it, and he tweeted back, and he's asked, like, he stated, like, where is the QAnon doctrine being spewed in the film, in the script, and nobody can answer him.
They can't.
They can't pinpoint anything that's actually. He's like, where is it?
And that's the more sickening thing, is when you saw all of these major media publications and outlets jump on to the same talking point.
Yeah.
It was then now QAnon conspiracy. Yeah. And I just think it's so funny because none of them, one, can even blanketly tell you what QAnon is. It's just, again, these weird guys that show up with torches at rallies, I guess. That's all they can ever say. They never talk about their credo.
Helmets.
It's like,
or whatever. Or,
the human
cargo pants.
It's like, human trafficking's now just a conspiracy? I don't think so. I mean...
But that's what's so funny is, like, they have this unified front, this message that they carry out there, and then they get it promoted by... I mean, they all jump on that bandwagon, and it's just like, again, what in the world is their aim? Why?
Well, I think part of it, too, is...
Other than just us explaining... Yeah. Exactly what we are here, but that they are pedos and groomers.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. The aspect of it being like billionaires and like these corporate heads that are helping to fund this, I think that's where they're getting at. Well, that's the conspiracy. It's like, except we already know that happens because look at Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah,
it's like, how many people? And we like, you're trying to say that billionaires aren't funding it because we already know there's a full list of people that y'all won't release.
Well,
exactly.
Look how quickly they jumped on the rumors of Mel Gibson and this documentary that he was supposedly making that was going to point out the Hollywood sex trafficking stuff going on. And they quickly jumped on that, like, oh, it's not really happening. Oh, this is just a rumor and all this stuff. I don't know if it is. But again,
I mean, he has come out and
said he wasn't.
It's not working on a documentary.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. Ultimately, I agree. I agree with you. It's like the moment there's even just an inkling
self-defense
of
mode.
Right.
Boom.
Right. They've got to tackle it, and they've got to try to
nothing
poison.
To hide. What are you defending against?
Right. I'd
Well,
say if I was innocent, I'd say bring it on.
Well, and I think that's where you just have to come down to they're exposing themselves.
Literally.
In more ways.
To children, which is not good.
They are showing. God. They are bearing all.
Shouldn't laugh about it.
You should know.
No, because here's the thing. This is what we're up against, and what we're up against are the elites and the high and mighty who are hiding the Epstein list from being exposed, that are hiding the controversies of these huge, mass businesses that are created because of the sex trafficking industry. And again, it's more so that they are willing to sacrifice the innocence of a child at whatever cost because they care more about their pleasure and, again, getting their knocking what I forget the phrase, knocking their socks off, I guess you could say.
Getting their rocks off?
Getting their rocks
off.
And it's just like, you said it earlier.
Pleasure and profit, because they are making a lot of money off this too.
Yeah, $150 billion a year.
Yep. I mean, that alone, that's just, I don't know one person that didn't see this film who didn't come out of the theater thinking, was pissed off. My brother-in-law mentioned that he was pissed off.
Mm-hmm.
If anything, it was like, because there is only so much you can do as an individual, but as a united front, that's the beauty of not only seeing a film like this and promoting it, but also looking ahead to the ways in which we can make an influence on the next generation.
Yeah.
And we can be the generation that knocks sex trafficking
And
down to
is
being something
that is
that's
the
futile.
importance of. Sorry, I was trying to wait for
Go
you.
ahead, go ahead.
But that is the importance of a movie like this, is getting the message, because the more people whose eyes you open, the more people who can be on the lookout for those things. Because again, when you ignore the problem because you don't want to talk about it, then that allows these individuals to continue kidnapping. But if everybody's aware and everybody's looking out for each other's children, as a community should, that makes it that much harder when people know we have to be cautious no matter where we go, because it's easy for these people to pick up. As long as nobody acknowledges the problem, they ignore it, it's that much easier for people to kidnap children and traffic
and
them.
partly, I hate to say it, but I think it is that ignorance is bliss, and I think that's a lot of the mentality too here is a lot of these people who just, again, they live in their own reality. I mean, that is what culture today you are inundated with. You are constantly inundated with. Live in your own world. You can make up your own reality. You could be whatever you want to be. So in order to keep the mentality and that motion moving forward, keep that momentum up, that's the message you have to preach. You have to preach that, just ignore reality. Put it behind you. So when you have people like this coming forward, not only critiquing the film, it's because in their mind, one, they don't want to believe it's happening, and two, they'll look to the same outlets who ignore any notion of the reality and just say, well, I didn't see it there, so it must not be happening.
Yeah.
I'm going to just turn a blind eye to it. And I think that's the vicious cycle that we've not only had going on in this country for years and generations, or for decades on end, with the mass flow of information, but now we're getting to the point where we can parse out the information that is easier to spoon-fed and easier for us to digest. And we ignore all of the atrocities. That's the thing. Like I said, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I'm not a hypocrite by having a MacBook and a phone and nice clothes on my back, and not pretend that there wasn't some slave labor that went into creating all of these nice toys and gadgets and gizmos that I have. But at the same time, I'm also not going to sit here and parade around as if it's a moral good that it is happening. No, I think the motion that we should all be moving towards is to bring light to the issues at hand, to bring light to these atrocities, and to say, what can we do as not only a nation, but as a people and as a society who wants to usher in the goodness. And of course, it starts with that foundation. You have to actually know what goodness is. And in a world devoid of moral authority, when you don't have that moral authority of God, when you don't have that bedrock, that foundation, what else could you expect than there just to be a vacuum, and for that void to be filled with narcissistic behavior, which is exactly what we see on display in all facets of artistic creation today. That's the sad part. I mean, you look at Lil Nas X, you look at all of the crap that comes out in terms of what we call music nowadays. I don't care if I sound like an old fogey. And I know every generation has it like, back in my day, we had real music. There's still music out there to be had, no doubt.
Sam Elliott was worse than Lil Nas X.
Well, what was it? What did he
was
he
was the one that did the devil thing at the Oscars, or at the not the Oscars.
I don't know.
He had he dressed in a red suit.
Yeah,
and had demons dancing around on
the,
stage.
Sam Elliott?
No,
you
what's his name?
No.
Sam Elliott's the old actor.
Sam Elliott's
No.
from
Not that
Up
guy.
in the Air.
What's the guy's name?
No, Sam Smith. Is it Sam Smith?
Sam Smith.
Is it Sam
I'm
Smith?
sorry. Yeah, I think it is.
Is that right?
It's like Sam Elliott.
Yeah,
That's
no,
like,
not
from
that guy.
From the ranch?
No, not that guy.
I was like,
man.
Sam Smith.
Sam
that's
Smith.
it. I
My
Googled
bad.
it. Yeah, that's
Sam
him.
Elliott is good. He's okay.
I mean, I might.
We know.
Yeah.
I might.
Yeah, he might do that in his
I
spare
might
time.
actually pay some money to watch Sam Elliott do that.
I was like,
His voice and everything.
is it pretty bad that
Dude.
I was gonna say,
yeah.
I
Dude
thought-
abides.
The dude abides.
Yeah.
I say if you had
The
him
devil
as the
abides.
devil and Jeff Bridges as God,
Oh,
dude.
that would be legit.
That would be great.
That would be a good movie.
I kind of think Sam Elliott with the voice should be
Yeah.
God, and Jeff Bridges should
Yeah.
be
I
the
like
devil.
that twang though Jeff Bridges
Yeah.
has. I don't want
Well,
that
you
to
got
be given
the
to the
devil
devil.
went down to Georgia. That could work if he did the
Yeah.
That's true.
Let me play my fiddle.
All righty, guys. I think we've talked about Sound of Freedom.
We have.
Go and see it if you haven't checked it out. It's worth watching, not only for the message and the content, but also to give a big up yours to the media establishment who are just trying to keep it from being seen.
Hey, if you go see the movie and you like it, get on their website and do the whole pay it forward thing where you purchase a ticket and it's given away to somebody else. It's really easy to do. I think it's like $15 for a single. We did too. I thought maybe I'd pay for a couple to go see this movie. Hopefully,
awesome.
A couple with kids, and it's like our church bought a bunch of tickets and gave them away.
See, that's
So
why
it's
the
like
film's cheating.
It's cheating. I mean, they paid for a ticket. Who
No,
cares
I was
who
gonna
used
say-
it? Again, it's not cheating.
Yeah, it's
but
not.
But yeah, if you like it, maybe somebody remove the financial burden on them to go see the movie and let them go see it.
It is. It's that important. All right, let's move
Yeah.
on to our Vices segment. Let's get into it. I missed it. I almost said it at the same time. Real quick, I do want to bring up one other thing because we had a headline we skipped over that I wanted to talk about, but we're running a little late. And actually, if we're going to have the link to the article in the description below the video, click on it, read it. It kind of gives you all the info there, but it's about the SAG strike that could be coming. I think the decision time is up tomorrow, so it's kind of funny because we could have brought it up on the show as a prelude to what is going to probably happen tomorrow after the show.
Yeah,
but also
it always happens.
It happens every time.
Yeah.
I feel like we drop a bomb on this show, and then the next day it's like something even more develops.
Yeah, they have till July 12th, so that is tomorrow.
Tomorrow, yeah. So,
Yeah.
but I also didn't bring it up because as I read through the article, they were talking. Most of it was kind of funny because they were just like, "Yeah, it'll be the first time since the 1960s that both SAG and WGA were on strike."
Yeah.
So what does that mean? Well, really nothing because most of the delays are from the writers already being on strike.
Yep.
Because the actors don't have anything to act
They've
in.
said it's like, oh, it's no big
Yeah.
deal. It's like, oh, it's going to be a big deal if both are on strike and it lasts a long time. But
Well, and that's the
Yeah.
bigger thing is the reason why we're not really pushing it out there is because one,
We don't know.
we don't know until it happens, which could be the deadline's tomorrow, and they may push it back again, or if they do go on strike, once it passes the 6-month mark, which they've never gone that long since they've only ever gone that long once, which was back in the year 2000. And that was actually it was just the SAG, just Screen Actors Guild that was on strike. So we'll
like they
cover
go
it.
on
We're
strike,
following it.
like every decade.
Well, yeah, and it's always that. And they mentioned that in the article too. It's always about not necessarily gripes of pay compensation, but more so pay that is received from other mediums. Back in the '60s, when they went on strike with the WGA, it was about getting.
Like television?
It was money
Yeah.
for movies being on television or being televised, and now it's about streaming.
Yeah.
Which we've talked about on the show before. So obviously we're following it. We'll definitely keep tabs on it, but we're also going to the lake tomorrow.
Once
so
there's more
we're
info-
gonna be out of town for the next few days and just enjoying the sun.
Red Moon field trip.
That's right.
Yep.
We take it every year,
Annually.
and kind of in light of going down and enjoying our beautiful and wonderful time at the lake, we often watch a lot of B movies.
Yeah.
So that got me thinking about this week's, Vices segment, which Keith, you brought this up a couple weeks ago, and I thought this is a great time to bring it up now on the show. And that happens to be, oh gosh, I just went to black.
Wow.
Oh,
I don't know
go
why.
to black.
Well, not yet. The show's not over,
Fade to
guys.
black.
Teasing you. No, let's talk about our favorite guilty pleasure movies. That's a vice. It's a good vice.
Yeah, no, it is. Because I definitely have plenty.
Several. Yeah. Yeah.
No, it's because I specifically when I was talking to you about it because people were talking about. I got onto some rabbit hole on Reddit that ended up like talking about Freddy versus Jason, and I'm like, that is definitely a guilty because that is an absolutely terrible movie, but it's so much fun like to watch literally only the last 20 minutes when they actually fight is good. Like there's entertaining. I shouldn't say good, entertaining.
It's what you get for the reason why you came.
But it's worth the price of admission. I was like, you know what? It was fun. And I feel that way about like all of the there's only 2 good Nightmare on Elm Street movies. The rest are terrible, but not a single one of them are not entertaining. And I mean, and really horror films for me alone, I think a lot of those are guilty pleasure movies. Basically 80s, like not modern ones. Modern horror movies that are bad are just bad. 80s horror movies that are bad are still fun. Like the Halloween.
Do you not think that's going to hold up in 20 years when the modern horror movies that we consider just bad movies?
Some people might like them. Because the 80s still had a level of camp and kitsch that is like okay, Halloween's a perfect example. After the first 2, they're trash, but Donald Pleasance, every Halloween movie Donald Pleasance is in, I love
I disagree.
because he chews the scenery.
I cannot get
I
through
love it.
Return of Michael Myers, Revenge of Michael Myers, and Curse of Michael Myers. I can't get through
All
them.
I need is Donald Pleasance.
Never seen them.
And Michael Myers.
That's 4, 5, and 6.
Yeah, they're terrible movies. But Donald Pleasance is so much fun to watch because he just chews the scenery, and I'm like, I'm okay with this because I'll just watch this man.
I'm just bored
all
by
day.
him. But I agree. Okay, so which is it right to say that there is something that is critically acclaimed that you think is a bad movie, but it's still a guilty pleasure?
Titanic, because I know that's yours.
That's mine. I'm like you. It's one of mine. Because I definitely understand the notion of it can be a bad movie that is critically panned and most people don't like, but you enjoy. Because I have those as well. But Titanic is definitely the guilty pleasure for me that I enjoy it, but overall I'm just like, no, it doesn't. It's still a movie that can be remade. It's nothing flawless with it that I'm like, oh, this could never be touched. I don't know.
It's no Ben-Hur.
No, it is not by any means. Or Return of the King, even though it's the only other movie that's won 11 Academy Awards. But yeah, Titanic would be up there. Sean, what about you?
See, I don't know. Like I agree with the lake movies. Those are kind of like a guilty pleasure, but that's just like the one time a year that I'll watch those kind of movies. Mine is more like good movies that I'll watch anytime it's on. Like at least multiple times a year I'll watch the 10 Commandments. I know every word
But
to
I
that
wouldn't
movie.
call that a guilty pleasure.
Well, I mean,
you shouldn't
it's
feel
like
guilt over watching that one.
I understand, but I mean, to me, it's one of those movies that it's like I'll watch that anytime. Like I could watch it every day. Really,
it's
pretty bad.
I don't know if that wouldn't be.
It's not a guilty pleasure.
You wouldn't feel guilty about it.
Yeah.
I feel bad about like, hey, what movie you want to watch tonight? You want to watch the 10 Commandments again? Like, yeah.
Well, then,
that's
if
one of those
you're
movies.
constantly offering it up.
Yes. Oh yeah. Yeah.
But
I could watch
Mortal
it.
Kombat.
No.
Love Mortal Kombat, the original.
Yep.
Such a save your pity for the weak.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so good. The
I
original.
like monster. I like creature movies. I would say that more
Godzilla movies.
No,
for me.
not monster movies. I'm talking about like Critters and Gremlins and Ghoulies, and
See,
I'll watch
Gremlins
those.
isn't
I'll watch those
that's
anytime.
not a guilty pleasure either because that's a good movie.
Critters and Ghoulies is though.
Yeah, Critters and Ghoulies are pretty bad.
Yeah.
Puppet Master. I
Puppet
love those movies, but they're
Masters,
not good. But I love those movies.
Troll 2. That's a great
amazing.
guilty
That is
pleasure movie.
amazing.
I've never seen that whole movie.
Well, it's on my
So
Plex drive.
good.
We can watch it at the lake. It's amazing.
I always fall asleep or go do something else.
It is so bad. It's great. I love
It's
it.
just the freaking memes that come out of that movie.
They're eating her.
And then they're going to eat me.
Oh my
God.
You
So
mentioned
good.
Tremors earlier. Tremors is one of those
love it.
movies that I love.
Oh,
Love
that's
it.
a great
but
one.
again, it's not a bad movie.
The first one.
No, the first
but
one.
here's the thing too is that was a cult.
I say the
cult favorite.
Yeah,
subsequent
it's not a bad
sequels.
movie.
Yeah, you couldn't call that a guilty pleasure.
The sequels,
either,
I'd say, are guilty pleasures because some of them are they're not. None of them are good, but some of them I've been entertained by. What's his name that plays Bert? Like as long as he's in, because see if they make
Yeah.
any more now that
Yeah.
he's retired from those roles, I'm not gonna care.
Little Shop of Horrors.
Yeah.
That's another one. It's like
But I wouldn't call that guilty either.
again. Well, I mean,
think it's a good-
that's subjective.
It is.
Some
It
people
is.
think that's a terrible movie. I think
true,
it's great.
But I think objectively, if it's a cult classic, a majority of people now consider it to be a good movie. I mean, like to me, that's why I said I would agree though because I
Yeah.
did include Titanic.
Yeah,
And
most
Titanic
people
is
would like
objectively a good movie.
but you feel shame for watching it.
Yes, yes. So well, that's okay. That's
Yeah.
a good way to
Shamed for
put it.
watching it.
Yeah.
A movie that you
trying to
feel
think of a
shamed,
movie
but
Yeah.
you're
for
like, I
watching
don't care if somebody knows I watched this. I still think it's a good movie.
Oh hell, Jupiter Ascending.
Okay,
There you go.
That's a guilty pleasure
that's
movie.
a go.
Yeah.
There you go.
Oh, I hate that movie.
I
Yeah.
never. Okay,
Eddie Redmayne
here's
is
one that I
terrible.
know because I remember Neil talking about. I never watched it. I have no desire to watch it, but I know Neil like used to talk about how good it was. The Notebook. I would consider that a guilty pleasure movie. I don't know.
It's not.
I
good.
mean,
and I would never watch it, so it's not.
I don't.
not for you.
No, it was
maybe
terrible.
for Neil. I
I
don't
don't
know. I don't know if you feel shame for watching that or not.
They're definitely not the Notebook. I don't like, but there are some rom-coms.
Dear John.
No, if I'm watching
Dear
that,
John.
there's one reason I'm watching that.
God.
And that's
Why
Amanda
did who
Seyfried.
chose
Yeah.
that? Why did we watch it at the lake? Did
Me-
Ty pick that?
I got one. You said Amanda Seyfried. That put me Mean Girls, hands down.
Yeah.
Mean Girls
yeah.
is a horrible movie. I will watch Mean Girls
No, it's funny.
until it
Yeah.
won't play anymore.
I feel bad. I would agree with that one. I would watch it because I don't like Tina Fey, but she wrote a really good movie.
Yeah.
That was a
But
great
that's
movie.
a movie that I would say most males probably don't find.
Yeah.
And,
No,
and I
Actually,
love that movie.
there was a guy that I went to college with who quoted that movie all the time, and he unabashedly was a fan.
Oh, yeah.
He tried to make fetch happen, didn't he?
Oh, well, here's the thing. He made Fetch happen because I mean,
gotta make Fetch happen.
He freaking quoted it all the time,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
everybody knew he was like he would watch it all the time.
Yeah, that's a great movie.
Almost any Disney Channel original is a guilty
I
pleasure
know,
for
you're
me.
all about those.
I
man.
do. I grew up on them.
I never watched them.
I mean,
I was a
Horse
Nickelodeon
Sense,
kid. so-
Xenon. I mean, now Brink is
You're like,
objectively a
Halloween
great
Town.
movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually don't like that.
He
one.
didn't get into those.
You didn't like Halloween Town.
I didn't like Halloween.
I liked
Town.
Halloween Town 1 and 2. After that, it was done.
Phantom of the Megaplex.
That was a good one. I like the original Under
no
Wraps.
There was this. I didn't like Under Wraps.
I like the original.
There was one that you cannot find, and it wasn't really a Disney Channel original. It was like an old, I guess, straight to VHS, but it was called The Paper Brigade.
Yes.
And I loved that movie.
That's a
but
great one.
That one's you can't find that anywhere.
I remember
Heavyweights, but that's not a guilty
No,
pleasure.
no.
Yeah, no.
Such a good
amazing.
movie.
That's a good
Just say,
movie.
Susie Q was original with what's her
Q, yeah.
what's her name from
Oh,
Power Rangers?
yes,
Gosh.
she is hot.
Yep.
Oh, she's still hot.
Yeah.
Ditto.
That was
Jinx.
that had James Belushi in it, didn't it? Susie Q.
I can't
I
remember.
don't remember.
I thought it had a young. No, it wasn't him. I was thinking, what's his name from Goonies, the fat one, who's now on
Chunk?
the top.
Jerry
Jerry O'Connell, but
yeah.
it's not him. It's not Jerry O'Connell in that. I forget. It's actually a no-name actor, but he didn't grow on to be anything.
He was the fat
My
kid in
Date
Stand
with
By
the-
Me, not Goonies.
Did I say Goonies?
Yeah,
I meant
yeah,
Stand By Me.
yeah,
I
yeah.
meant Stand By Me. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Mixing up your fat kids.
I am. it's what happens.
Yeah.
But no. Then there was the.
I'm thinking of Curly Sue. Sorry,
Uh,
not Susie Q. Curly Sue. Curly Sue had James Belushi in it.
I didn't know there was a Curly Sue.
Curly
You
Sue.
can't find Susie Q on anything.
I'm trying to Google it. Google says no.
It doesn't have it.
Yeah.
There was a movie I looked for the other day that I could. Oh, Power Rangers movie.
Oh yeah,
That's a guilty pleasure.
I think that might be on my Plex. It was because we watched it last year at the lake.
I'll turn it on this year
Yeah.
too. I will always watch that movie.
Ivan Ooze. Yes.
But no, I couldn't find. I was gonna buy it on Vudu finally and be like,
yeah?
you know what? I
Oh
just
my
want to
God,
watch
you
it.
would pay for it.
Yes, I freaking wore the VHS out.
Wow.
It literally ate the tape in the VHS machine when I was growing up.
I wouldn't call this a guilty pleasure movie. I think it's actually more of an underrated movie. But I bought Cats Don't Dance on Vudu because it's not anywhere. Because it's an old Warner Brothers animated movie from the '90s before they really and like it didn't. It's not a bad movie. It came out against I think some Disney film. It didn't do well at the box office, and that was one that I was like, you can't find anywhere. I bought it because I loved it as a kid. So.
I know it's like that's the crazy part about it is you can't find some of these films anymore, and it's like these are hidden gems, and maybe we need to have that on as a segment.
Hidden gems.
Or,
and-
well,
yeah.
just movies that aren't available.
Yeah.
That because even though we've apparently digitized everything nowadays, there's some movies and content that you can't find, and that'd be a good
Have y'all ever
topic.
seen Legend?
Yes, with
Tom
Tim Curry and
Cruise's
Tom
first movie?
Cruise. Yes.
No, I've not seen it.
That's one that I was like, that's a
fun.
horrible movie.
It is.
A
but
guilty
it's
pleasure?
Great. Yeah, I love it. Yeah.
Huh.
There's 3 different versions of that movie.
You may have seen
And-
like snapshots or like I don't know if you ever seen like the bit like it's Tim Curry but he looks like the
He's
devil.
the
He's got
devil with
big
these
red,
big
yeah,
horns.
Never seen it.
Dude, the makeup is fantastic.
Yeah, it
for one.
is.
It's a Ridley Scott movie. It's one of
Really?
Ridley Scott's first films.
No way.
Yes.
Are you looking forward
It's
to
a
that
fantasy
Napoleon?
movie.
Napoleon's gonna drop.
Dude, I'm
interested
I'll have
in
to
it.
download Legend and we'll take
I'm-
that to the lake.
I'm willing to watch it.
Mia,
Never
what's
seen
her
it.
name? The girl from Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. Yep.
Ooh,
She back then.
she's in that.
Yep.
That's Tim Curry.
I've seen the
Yeah.
poster work.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Show man.
I
Tom
can,
Cruise.
Yeah,
with
I
that.
can hold it. I can hold it.
Yeah.
up.
Dude, Tom Cruise is terrible.
Yeah.
He's terrible,
Terrible.
in it.
This I
Absolutely
think this
awful.
is before Risky Business.
Oh wow.
I think it's literally his first. It may be his first film.
What's funny is
it's horrible.
it makes me think of Tom Hanks in that. What was that game movie he did where he's like the dungeon master?
Oh yeah,
the
yeah.
TV made movie.
Yes.
What was that?
Yeah.
This one's not that.
No,
bad.
no,
not
no,
that
no,
bad,
but, okay. 'Cause
I can't
when-
think of that.
When I
but
think
that
of that
was-
as being Tom Hanks'
Yes.
first
Mia
starring
Sarah.
role.
Mia Sara. Yeah, dude.
Yep.
In that movie, I'm bringing Legend. I'm gonna get it.
All right,
I think I have it on
all
my
right,
Plex.
okay.
I'll have to get that one off too.
Okay.
Because just seeing Tom Cruise is like a he's got the long flowing.
I'm telling
hair.
you, for its time, it's Lord of the Rings quality makeup.
No.
And, yeah. The orcs and
The effects
like,
are pretty good.
The
I would say,
effects
for
are pretty
the
good
80s.
Okay.
for when
Okay.
it was
The-
made.
the
yes.
not the quality
There's
of the
nothing
movie,
else
the makeup.
nothing else made like it in that time when it was
Okay.
made.
I
It's
would
pretty good.
liking it to a cheap Labyrinth, maybe. Like it's not good like Labyrinth. I love Labyrinth, but I would just say as
See,
far
I
as
would
like,
even call it, which that's a cult classic, but that's a guilty
yeah.
pleasure.
Yeah.
I'd watch that.
Yeah.
Anytime.
Yeah, that's
Jennifer
true.
Connelly in that.
Yeah.
See, I don't feel guilty about that one.
And I was younger when she was older.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
I
I
say
can-
that I love. That has a nice, I think, cult following. So I don't feel guilty about that one.
No, same. There was another
I'll
one too.
stare
that's
at David Bowie's crotch for a full hour. It's
the
okay.
bog of eternal stench. But no, there was another one that also was Never Ending Story.
Oh, I love that one too.
But that's
Oh,
also
yeah.
that's
Yeah.
considered a
I
critically
can't
acclaimed.
sit
like,
through that
oh,
movie.
it's,
I just
They
can't.
look like big, strong hands, don't they?
I don't mind the rock biter.
I love the
and
rock
I like
biter.
I like even the bat dude. I can't stand.
Oh, the pompous snail guy.
He's so annoying.
Yeah.
He's a racing snail. I hate him. He's
the
he
Gamork, man.
scared the hell out of me.
Well,
That
for
movie-
you, a guilty pleasure's got to be Silver Bullet.
Oh, Silver Bullets.
That's a terrible
definitely.
movie.
No, it's not. Gary
is a-
Busey deserved an Oscar for that movie.
I love I love
Feel like a virgin on prom night.
I love Silver Bullet as well. I can't say nothing against it, but
It's
yeah,
so good.
Yeah.
Oh, I bought
man.
that one. I bought that
That,
one on Voodoo. I gotta watch. It's so good.
I don't think this was a guilty pleasure either because it was popular when it came out. But I do like the original Pet Sematary.
Yeah.
it was well received. I just don't think it's as well. I don't think it holds up as well as
No,
it could have.
I agree.
Yeah.
I'm still trying to think of a romance. I'm still trying to think of a romance
Oh,
movie.
Sleepless in Seattle is.
But that's a good.
I'll watch that.
That's
anytime.
a good movie.
I don't think it is.
What?
Now,
Yeah.
now that I go back and watch it, I'm like,
Really?
this is so.
I think for me, and I mean,
See,
it's
500 Days of Summer is great, but that's not a guilty
that's not
Yeah,
pleasure.
good.
no,
I think
that's
for
just a
me
good
would,
movie.
would be Forgetting Sarah Marshall, but that one's not terrible
No, that's a
either.
good movie, yeah.
So
Yeah, that's the thing. I know there's some romance out there that I would watch that I would be considered like, oh, that's you probably shouldn't like that. but I like
Twilight.
it. Hell no. Hell no.
That's just
Awful.
guilty.
Awful.
Not pleasure at all.
You- if you-
Do not pass go straight to jail.
That's not good.
Alrighty, guys. That's going to do it for this episode. We are so excited because we're about to go on vacay. But we're not leaving you all without what movie we're going to review for next week. We've already stated it. The big one on the block, it's going to kick off our entire week of lake fun festivities. And that is Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1.
Mm-hmm.
The first one of 2. There's not going to be like 4 or 5.
Oh, part one.
Well, we
the
don't
first
know.
One.
He wants to act till he's 80. Hopefully, doing Mission
Yeah.
Impossible movies. Tom Cruise said
this is a
he-
two-part
yeah.
movie, but they said that doesn't mean it's the last one because everybody thought this was the end, and him and Christopher McQuarrie, who's directed the last few, both were like, "Oh no, it's split into 2 parts, but we're still planning on making more." It's like, okay,
We'll see.
Dang.
We'll
Yeah.
see.
I thought it
I
was
don't
the
know
last
about
one,
that.
too.
I think that this could be a nice wrap up if they don't end up making more. But of
We'll
course,
see.
if it's popular enough,
they said they're already discussing the next one. So
let me put it this way: they haven't even come out with part 2 yet.
I know, but
It's
they
like-
said they're already
it's how it
planning
always-
the ones
They already
after
know.
that.
Let's just say, like, I think Tom Cruise could pull off more stunts
Oh,
than we
yes.
saw Harrison Ford do in Indiana 5. Okay?
Tom Cruise at 80 is probably going to
Yeah.
be way more believable still playing Ethan Hunt than Harrison Ford.
Tom Cruise
Yeah.
can still land a plane.
Yeah.
Harrison Ford can't.
Very true.
I
Hey,
mean,
he could have landed that plane back in the what age was that? I don't even know. At the end of Indy 5.
Oh God,
No
it was like
spoilers.
200 BC.
I don't know.
So I don't even know.
But anyways-
man's injured himself on like the last 3 sets he's been on.
I know.
Yeah.
They had to stop production on this movie when it first started
They
rolling.
did for Star Wars too, because
Yeah.
the hydraulic door came down on his leg.
Yeah, he got hurt filming 1923. Also,
Harrison Ford?
yeah,
Was he in 1923? Oh no, I'm
Yes,
thinking of
you're thinking of
You're thinking of
1917.
yeah,
1880.
I was
Or
thinking of
whatever.
1883.
What is it called?
1883, 1923.
Yes, 1923
And then-
is Harrison Ford and
Yeah,
Helen
I was
Mirren.
I was thinking of 1917 is what I was thinking
Right.
of. Yeah.
He is not in that.
He was not in World War One.
No.
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 Well, he probably was. Alrighty, guys.
He was sperm.
We are looking forward to going and enjoying the lake, but yes, we're going to be reviewing Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 next week's show, of course, at our regularly scheduled time, Tuesday, 9 p.m. Eastern. Thank you all so much for tuning in. But before we go, housekeeping items. As always, like, share, subscribe right there at the bottom of your screen. Red Moon Book, Red Moon Tweet, Red Moon Picks, and of course, search for Red Moon Productions on both YouTube and Rumble. We're on both platforms. Hope to be live on Rumble one of these days. And of course, there's also that old-fashioned way. I said it last week. I did not do it justice.
Oh.
Keith is here to return, and he is going to read this wonderful way of contacting us.
RMPodcast at redmoonproductions.com.
Man, I missed
Dude.
it. I missed it.
He just made up for it.
That was beautiful. That's a guilty
That was
pleasure
2
of
weeks
mine.
worth in one.
What you all don't understand is when I go to sleep at night, that's all I listen to and repeat
Yeah.
is our email in his voice.
Mm.
And it puts me right to sleep. Just warm and soothing.
And then you wake up wet.
Guilty
Have a
pleasure.
little wet dream.
A little too much pleasure.
Gosh.
Alrighty, guys, that's going to do it for this episode of the Red Moon Podcast. Thank you all so much for tuning in. He's wanting to put in.
Yeah.
He's wanting to do one of those.
Oh no, I
deals.
actually even forgot about those. Hold on.
There it is. It makes an appearance in almost every episode. There it is. You got to follow
That's
it.
what
Yeah,
I
we got
say at the
both.
beginning
Yeah.
and end of every wet dream.
That's it.
It's working and I hate you.
And that's what I say
Through another extra
at
one
the
in there.
start. I'm
There
like,
it
oh,
is.
well, there it is.
Well, there it is.
All right,
What'd you
guys.
do?
That's afterwards. Too. It's what
All
I
right,
do.
we
when I
got
wake up.
our fill in.
Alrighty, guys. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Until next time, I'm one of your hosts, Brandon Davidson, alongside our normal new host.
Sean Sebastian.
And,
Keith Cheatham.
oh, he didn't do his
We're going to the
nickname.
lake. I thought we would,
We're going to die. Nobody's going to remember you now.
might.
We hope you enjoyed this week's episode. For more reviews, previous podcast shows, and everything Red Moon, visit our website, redmoonproductions.com. You can also like us on Facebook or follow us on Twitter by searching for Red Moon Productions, LLC. We'll see you at the movies.